Today I've become deranged, as for this video I will be attempting to beat Fire Emblem Engage with every unit having 0 in strength, magic, dex, speed, defense, resistance, luck, and build. These stats are going to be capped at this value, so even if I reclass or level up, they will never increase. If you want a scale of how hard this is, in chapter 2, this guy right here one-rounds my entire team. So for the rules for this run, I will be playing on Maddening Classic with fixed growths. I cannot inherit Duel Assist, I will not use the paid DLC, but I will use the free Fire Emblem Heroes bonus items. Since specifically chapter 3 was really hard, like stupid hard. For that map and for that map alone, I rate the RNG to be in my favor in regards to landing inconsistent hit rates, landing low percentage crits, and preventing any crits against my own units. Now with the rules out of the way, I spent a stupid amount of time making this video, so I'd appreciate if you liked the video and subscribed if you enjoy. Okay, so after Alir looks at his stats, he makes the correct decision to just run, and then we begun the first chapter. Here our 0 in almost every stat was already starting to show, as Alir was getting 2-shot and was dealing next to no damage. To make sure we survived, I placed Alir in this lower thicket, and now I made use of Alir's very good personal skill for this run, granting +3 true damage and -1 damage taken to adjacent allies. With this boost and Vanda's Iron Axe, he was able to deal considerable damage. Now Alir dodged on enemy phase, I placed him and Vanda one space to the right, healed with a vulnerary, and after securing a kill on the next turn, it was time for Alir to receive the Marth Ring. And with it we watch a gameplay accurate cutscene where it takes like 10 hits to kill this regular corrupted. With Marth obtained, Alir has received a small stat boost to strength and dex, but what is actually more noteworthy is with 0 build, Marth doesn't grant us any speed, and this may be important for the next chapter. Anyway, after firing off a Lodestar Rush, Alir managed to secure a kill on one of the corrupted on enemy phase, while Vanda runs up to regroup with Alir. With the corrupted's fairly low hit rates, Alir managed to secure a kill on another corrupted, and when Vanda arrived they were fine to take out the third. The 2 remaining corrupted to the south were then swiftly dispatched by Vanda, and we cleared the first chapter. Now, after a boring exposition dump filled with these literal PNG backgrounds, we move on to chapter 2, where Alir gets scared by Rock and Plant Man over here, and rightfully so, as with 5 speed and 20 attack, he one-rounds my entire team. Fortunately, we have access to Chain Guards and Alir's personal skill, allowing Alir and Vanda to retreat towards the north and survive 1 round of combat, assuming they don't just get crit. Okay, so this map is really hard. At first I tried just retreating to the north and praying a lucky crit would allow me to kill the Axe Fighter on enemy phase, but it turns out that this guy right here has an invisible skill that literally makes it impossible to crit him. So we couldn't do that. And because of that, this map seemed close to impossible, as with the archer's backup, there was no room to kill the Axe Fighter without being in range to just die to the archer. And if we just stalled for a few turns while backing away, Lumera would move and corner us. And with my units having awful offense, I needed multiple turns to kill each enemy here, which means I couldn't just rush towards Lumera to end this map quickly. Right now, this map seemed impossible. There was no room to fight, no space to heal up, no chance to win. I could only retreat and die. This is where I truly wondered if this run was a mistake, an idea that should just be brushed away. But just as I was ready to throw in the towel, every challenge I had done in the past flashed through my mind, as if they had all been accumulating to this very playthrough. Every niche experience had built up to this, and I had finally found the chink in the armor to this otherwise impossible challenge. All what was left to do now was beat the map. The first solution to our initial problem of the archer and fighter being grouped was simple. You see, the archers on this map will never attack Clan, but they still acknowledge his existence. So we can abuse this by using him to safely keep the archer distracted, allowing for us to defeat the Axe Fighter by hitting him with Vanda on enemy phase. Then Alir unequips their weapon to avoid being doubled and charges up Marth, while Vanda recovers enough HP to take and dish out another hit on enemy phase. Now Alir uses Lodestar Rush, and Vanda comes in for the KO. That's 1 enemy killed, but it turns out that Lumera moved towards Clan, and since she had more move than him, she'd catch up and kill him, so I decided to reset. Now this problem was easily solved by moving Clan up, but I couldn't move him up too much, or the archer would aggro to the rest of my squad and kill them. So this was the perfect place, but it came with a downside of about a 50% chance of Lumera moving towards Clan, when I wanted her to move up towards Fram, so I had to reset quite a few times for this. Okay, so Lumera is really hard to deal with, and with her high HP, I couldn't fight fair. I needed to cheese her. and the archer by clan was my only way to do this. So I retreated down, luring in Lumera, and by placing clan right here, I made the archer move in the perfect position. Now we just had to get lucky, and dodge one of these 3 attacks. With that done, my preparations were complete, as on enemy phase the archer would move first and attack Vanda, blocking Lumera off. By placing clan right here, he could safely continuously attack Lumera until she just died. Okay, that's phase 1 over. Let's move on to phase 2. So here, these 2 guys on the left are the problem. On my first try, I tried to split them up with clan by placing him here, but that wasn't effective. They stayed grouped. And on the right, Vanda and Alir were struggling to fight the Axe Fighter, and ultimately clan got cornered and everything just fell apart from there. Everyone just died. On my next attempt, I tried to split up the archer with Fram, since she starts closer towards the left. This actually worked, and now I turned my mod off, and I spent a good chunk of time just trying to figure out if I could make clan appear 2 spaces closer towards the left, as your starting position on phase 2 is slightly influenced by your position at the end of phase 1. After some testing, I couldn't find a way to make clan position where I wanted, but what I did find is this. This position was what I needed to finish this map, and I could easily get in this position by moving south just before I killed Lumera on phase 1. Now from here, I attacked with clan so he would receive Divinely Inspiring's damage boost. Then Alir could move, and if Vanda crits here, Fram could come in and secure the kill. And with clan where he was, it made the archer and lance fighter split up, allowing for clan to lure in the archer and bait them away. The lance fighter alone was not too hard to kill, especially with Marth's engage attack, and with the archer alone we could surround them so they couldn't attack, and Alir could build up his engage meter again. After killing them, we moved on to Lumera's final group. To win here, I just needed a little extra knowledge on how the AI worked. After determining Lumera liked to attack the target with the most HP, I was ready to finish this map. By placing Alir adjacent to Vanda here, I could bait in Lumera with Vanda, who just barely survives with both Alir's personal skill and a chain guard. Now Alir ran into the thickets for more avoid, equipped Marth's rapier, then Fram moved adjacent for even more avoid, and this was our final obstacle. Alir just had to dodge 3 attacks. And this time, after 25 hours of just this map, I finally got the luck I needed as Alir dodged 3 attacks. With a Lodestar Rush, I killed the other Cav, Clan killed the weakened one, and with a Chain Guard, Lumera would always attack Fram here. She now died, but units don't die in this map, so we were fine. Now I just abused Lumera's final weakness. You see, she will never attack Vanda with the Liberation. This final weakness was all I needed, and she slowly died to Clan, ending the seemingly impossible chapter. With that traumatic experience over, Alir now has a nightmare of what if he was a red unit? What if he had stats other than just HP? And now he gets jump scared by a low FPS fire effect, and the true nightmare begins as we step foot into chapter 3, where we have to deal with 5 enemies as soon as turn 2. Needless to say, even with 3 additional units, we was really struggling to do anything. I now tried a slightly more aggressive turn 1, but we were just short by a single point of damage. I needed a strong opening play or everyone would just get destroyed on turn 2. And even if I survived long enough to make it to turn 3, the incoming flyers will kill any attempt to progress further. Next I tried baiting in 1 flyer to the right with Vanda, whilst simultaneously baiting in the sword fighter with Alir, and surviving with a chain guard. This gave a small amount of chip that allowed for a few kills, but that was not nearly enough. Now this is where I started to rig the RNG in my favor, and even with this I only managed to kill 3 of the 5 enemies I needed to kill. So not only did I need perfect RNG, I needed a perfect strategy to come close to victory. This time around I tried keeping Vanda and Alir apart, in an attempt to separate the lance fighter. But it turns out this was a pretty bad idea, considering I was relying on Vanda and Alir's personal skills to deal significant damage. So now I tried placing Alir and Vanda right along here, but I lacked the firepower to kill the lance fighter. Identifying them as the problem, I decided to place both Alir and Vanda on the left, allowing for a crit to one-shot the sword fighter, and another crit to diminish the lance fighter's HP. This seemed like a pretty good situation, but there was a problem of the flyers who were approaching from the north. With them nearby, I couldn't safely kill the lance fighter at one range, and Clan lacked the firepower to kill them at a distance. Since Etier was focused on chipping down the flyers, it left no one in range to capitalize on the lancer's low HP. After approaching this map from as many sides as I could think, I reached a point where I was doing the same strategies over and over, and I kept failing. But after enough tries, I finally found the play I believe to have the highest chance of victory. So you move an engaged Alir right here, and Vanda crits down the sword fighter. With a chain guard, Alir avoided death, and we dealt a decent amount of damage with more crits on enemy phase. With 1 enemy killed and 2 whittled down, this was our best starting play. But there was some RNG to this, as in order to win from here, the Lance Fighter had to move so they were right here. Now Fram could heal Vander, Etier could kill the flyer next to Alir, and with Alir's personal skill, Clan could kill the remaining flyer. Now Alir moved here, and Vander came in with a bang, landing a crit and whittling down the Lance Fighter. This allowed Alfred to kill them, leaving just a sword fighter alive who had low durability and offense. So we survived enemy phase. Now we just had to kill the 3 remaining enemies, which we couldn't do as the flyer with the javelin was being protected by the flyer in the back. We just got 2 kills and took note of the flyer prioritizing Etier. So if I chain guarded, she would survive. But Fram didn't have the HP to do that. So where would Fram recover her HP? Well, the solution was to just not use her HP in the first place. So I just had to replay the first turn until I secured a lucky dodge on the Lance Flyer's first attack. Even if I got the luck to dodge the attack, I still needed the Lance Fighter to move correctly. So this took me quite some time. But when we got the attempt, I just had to do the same as last time. And now I activated the chain guard, allowing for Etier to survive. Now with her firepower, we could crush the 2 remaining flyers and prepare for the other large group of units, which in order to split them up, I retreated, and this caused the flyers to move along the right side here, but this didn't really work that well, as with the sword fighters approaching my position, I didn't have the space to fight either of them, and I considered this a loss. But on my next try, I came up with a plan. You see, if Alfred positioned here, it would influence the boss into moving towards the left here, and it would allow me to stall this sword fighter. This gave me, with a Vander crit, the space to take out the flyers, and with a vulnerary and a chain guard, Alfred could now retreat safely. This now positioned the archer right here, allowing me to kill them, and with them gone we were in a much better position, especially with a chain guard, as it caused this sword fighter to move next to Alir, giving us ample space to kill the sword fighter in the south, and a lodestar rush killed the other, leaving just the boss alive, who with their low speed couldn't double anyone, so I backed up, and I got an opportunity to weaken them with chain attacks and Alir's personal skill. After I easily survived enemy phase, we could quite easily finish the job with some chip from Clan and Etier, allowing Fram to reliably secure the kill, ending another chapter that took me an unreasonably long amount of time to beat, of about 10 hours. We now reach the Ring Vault, where we meet the biggest Fire Emblem Awakening fan, which we can identify from the fact that she doesn't have any feet. Despite winning the battle, she decides to retreat after she dodges a Ring Kamehameha shot by Lumera, who after sensing she is a parent in a Fire Emblem game, just dies. In a scene you can tell I was super invested in via the colour of the screen. After Sigurd drops a few FE4 spoilers, we arrive at the Somniel, and receive the Fire Emblem Heroes bonus items, which are basically just a few high hit and might weapons, along with some bond rings, with Sharena and Alphonse's being particularly strong, allowing us to boost our defense and offense of our allies, which is going to help us out a lot on Chapter 4. To start the map off, I visited the village and allowed for Celine to benefit from a significant attack boost from both Spur Attack and Divinely Inspiring on Alir. This caused her to deal spectacular damage when combined with Seraphim's effective damage, and already this map was looking much easier than the previous 2, but there was a problem. You see Louis stuck all the way over here. Chloe can just fly out of enemy range, but he is pretty much forced to just die. There's no way around it. For turn 2, I continue to push towards the right, with Saline leading the charge, but towards the left, the Lance Fighter and Handax Cav were a little more problematic than I expected, and I had to reset a few times here to figure out an easy way to deal with them. And the solution was quite simple, as all I really had to do is make sure Boucheron was in range to use Lodestar Rush on the Cav, while enough units were in range to take out the Lance Fighter. Now turn 3 is where Boucheron was in real trouble, as with this Cav approaching him, he couldn't run away, and if he was hit, he would die. Additionally, the approaching flyer was also a huge pain. All I could do is hope for a dodge, and on the right, the combination of Saline and Alfred was enough to take out the archer. Fortunately, Boucheron dodged, but that didn't really help, as now there was little hope of winning. There were just too many enemies everywhere, and with Saline's engage over, we lacked the firepower to kill more than 2 enemies in one turn. But I still gave it my best shot, killing the flyer on the left, and surviving an enemy phase. And here I thought I might actually be able to win by landing a big override with Alfred, but with a missed attack with Etier, I lost my chance at winning. Now I pretty much just replicated this strategy over and over, and with enough tries and luck, I concluded I couldn't do it. I was like 1 kill short every time I tried. So now, instead of pushing north, I chose to head right. But it turns out I also couldn't kill everyone over there. So new plan, just head north on turn 1. Another small change to my plan was not visiting the village with Louis before he died, as doing so would delay the bandit and make it a little easier to win. For turn 2, I attacked the hand axe cav with Vander to deal high damage. I then finished them off, and now on enemy phase, I needed a little bit of good luck with either some crits or dodges. This time around, I was lucky in terms of dodges. Now we had to kill 3 enemies, one with Etier, another with Vander, Clan, and Chloe, then a final one with Boucheron, Saline, and Alfred. Now I got crit, but after one reset, we survived enemy phase. This turn, I needed to kill 4 enemies, so I decided this would be a good time to use Override, and it allowed me to just barely kill everyone. Again on this next turn, we needed to kill quite a few enemies, with the Flyer being killed by Chloe and Etier, the Armored unit being killed by Clan and Boucheron's chain attacks, and the Archer being killed by Alfred and Saline. With that turn over, 4 enemies were pushing towards us from the south, and 2 were pushing in from the north, with some backup behind them. So the lower group seemed like my best target, so I spent one turn to split up the Flyer with Alfred, and then I tried to kill them all, but I lacked the firepower. Even with a lucky crit landed by Vander, I was nowhere near close to killing the mage. And with that, this attempt was over. As usual, I tried this strat a few more times, and it became clear that this wouldn't work. There was no way to kill 3 enemies in one turn without an engage. Even by repeatedly doing the same strat over and over. Wait, hold on, the mage just ran north for some reason. We only have to kill 2 units on this turn. So with that, we secured a way south. From here, if we could stall for a few turns, we could make the boss move down and towards the right, and meet us around the choke here, allowing us to avoid unnecessary fighting. But in order to stall, we had to fight the group with the mage, the 2 armored units, and the barbarian. So I baited out the frail mage, killed them, then with a chain guard, I chipped down the armor, and by backing away, we got even more chip. Now we didn't have the space to retreat as the fort blocked the way, so we had to fight, and with the barbarian's high attack and speed, they were the priority. With Alir, Saline, and Clan, we dispatched them, but our remaining units couldn't take both of the armors. So Fram punched one down, leaving a fairly mediocre lance armor alive. Fortunately, just Chloe and Saline could take them out. And now we waited for the boss to approach, who I baited into equipping a steel lance with Vander. This allowed my whole squad to attack him, and we just barely secured the kill and beat the chapter. In a cutscene, Alir now almost gets one-rounded by a corrupted, before being saved by an odd girl who has chains on her legs and a belt on her neck for some reason, which actually isn't all that out of place considering that this character joined in the same chapter. Alir now adopts a dog, which may seem like an act of kindness, but is in fact an act of pure evil, as he is sending that dog straight to the mines. After returning to the Somniel, we received a few steel weapons, and unlocked the ability to do push-ups, granting Alir 2 temporary strength. I also found this guy, who I tried to give a funny name, but the game wouldn't let me. My next objective was to roll a few useful bond rings, and this was actually surprisingly easy, as I had collected 13,000 bond fragments from just achievements, which confused me, but it turns out that if you reset maps for around 1,700 times, you get a lot of bond fragments. The main bond ring I was looking for here was Deirdre, as she would allow me to use chain guards with Fram on every turn, with the 5 HP healing. And I was also looking for Lucas for a small durability boost. When I collected a few rings, I was ready to start Chapter 5. For turn 1, I placed Vander on the left to slow down the sword fighters, and I placed Chloe, Alfred, and Saline in range to get some chip damage on enemy phase. With this chip damage, we were just barely able to kill one of the very strong sword fighters, with the help of Boucheron's chain attacks, and the other 2 enemies were easy to burst down with 2 engage attacks. For enemy phase, a smart chain guard kept us safe, and now this is where things were getting a little tricky, as with 4 enemies to the left approaching our position, we needed to act fast. So I dispatched the sword fighter on the right and formed up a line to get some chip on enemy phase. This also set up for a big override that severely weakened all 3 of the sword fighters, making it possible to kill every enemy there, as long as I got good luck. That I didn't get, but we were still fine as a chain guard saved Vander's life. After killing the weakened sword fighter, I baited in the next group and weakened with Alir. With this chip, making full use of momentum, Alfred secured a kill on the sword fighter, and for the other 2 axe fighters, a lucky crit killed one, and with good use of break with Saline, we managed to kill the other. The remaining 4 enemies conveniently split up, so I only had to fight 2 right now. And with a chain guard, I lured another in, killed them, and now it was time to surround the archer. By attacking here with weak weapons, we successfully built up all of our engages, and now we were ready to fight the next group of units. But how would I approach them? Break the door? Sack Saline with Warp Ragnarok? None of these. I just broke the wall near the top left, being careful to not be in range of the hand axe wielding fighter to avoid baiting out the formation of units near the boss. With enemies moving in, I retreated with Vander, while Saline, Etier, and Alfred killed one of the mages. Now one of the calves was passing through this choke, so I used Vander to weaken them on enemy phase, while Clan and Alfred broke down the door to split up some of the enemies. After securing the kill on the cav, I used a chain guard to aggressively position Saline and Alir to bait out the armor. With Lodestar Rush, they died. And now we have to kill 3 enemies, but with a huge override, Alfred came in and killed one of the calves, and blocked the archer from moving up. After unleashing a Warp Ragnarok, I reliably killed the Axe Fighter and blocked the Archer from moving with Etier. Now there were just 2 easy enemies left, of an Archer and a Thunder Mage, and with them killed, it was time to start thinking about the boss. I ran a few calculations, and determined that if I unloaded all my engage attacks on him, he would still survive with over 20 HP remaining, and with his great speed and a hand axe, there was no safe way to attack him without an engage attack. So I needed a careful plan if I was going to win, and after staring at the boss's formation for a while, I found one major weakness: this Axe Fighter. With just 4 speed, he couldn't double any of my units, so by using Chain Guard, I could lure him away and block this big choke point. Here I could stall for as many turns as I wanted, but there was one problem. I needed this Chi Adept to move away, and with Alfred, I did just that, and killed them when they ran down. Now the boss was in a big line, and they were a prime target for override, so I did that, then recharged with the Emblem Energy tile and did it again. After restoring Alfred's Emblem Energy one final time, he overrided, killing every unit other than the boss. And with this amount of chip, we would be able to kill him if we had all of our engage attacks ready. So I used Vander to keep him busy, and then I attacked. First Alfred attacked, then Clan finished, now Alir attacked, and Saline weakened him in range for Etier to secure the final kill and end the chapter. After unlocking the ability to change into a bunch of silly outfits, we did some preparations, heard the line, and was ready to take on Chapter 6. For this map, I decided that deploying a full team would be a waste. They would probably just die, so I chose to only deploy Saline and Chloe, who with their emblems possessed a way to advance towards Alir and Yunaka. Saline did this on turn 1, with a simple Warp Ragnarok, allowing us to kill the bandits with the Micaiah ring. Now Yunaka trades over a few useful items like a strong dagger and a HP tonic. On the next enemy phase, I used Yunaka to bait in a sword fighter. We then proceeded to kill them with Yunaka and Saline, but then we started to have a problem. Chloe was struggling to find an opportunity to sneak past and regroup with Alir, and the fog on this map made this especially hard. And I reset multiple times here to just figure out a way to allow her to safely regroup with the rest of my squad, which was fairly simple. I just needed to place Chloe here, use an engage torch with Yunaka, then retreat with Chloe for 2 turns. Then with a Sigurd engage, I could slip by the sword user and regroup with Alir. Now Chloe could help us by splitting up the enemies here, by standing in this place above Yunaka, but I quickly got overwhelmed, and was placed in a situation where it seemed nearly impossible to win. So on my next try, I used Chloe a little more offensively, and I felt like I was doing a good job at clearing out the enemies, until like 3 thieves appeared out of nowhere, and I had to use the time crystal to retreat to a previous turn, but the 3 thieves was still very scary. With this being the only option left, I had to just place Chloe right here and pray she didn't get crit, and continuously healed her with either Vulneraries or Yunaka, who was faring slightly better with her high avoid. Now it was really just up to luck. But even if Chloe was going to get crit, I could switch to the Slim Lance to prevent one. But ideally I wanted to give the Fencer a Celica engraving, so I could have high dodge as well as the attack down effect. Anyway, after somehow killing the thieves, the boss was visible. We might actually be able to win here, but Yunaka landed a really unlucky crit and she died. Fortunately, we still had a single charge of the time crystal, and with it I used Echo to burn some RNs. And this time, Yunaka survived and poisoned the boss, increasing her damage and allowing her to damage the boss without the help of Alir's personal skill. But this attempt comes to an unfortunate end, as a mage moves in and kills Chloe. Then without a frontline, we just kind of exploded. I now desperately replayed the map, trying to replicate the same situation as last time, and that just wasn't happening. So I accidentally came up with a better plan of trapping the Thunder Mage right here, and since they didn't one-round any of my units, I was safe to just stay there until the Longbow Archer appeared to replace the now dead Thunder Mage, and was easier to deal with since they couldn't attack up close. Now we just stalled again until the boss appeared, and I killed a unit at 2 range with Yunaka to lure in the boss. Here I expected him to act like last time, but this time he just picked the target he'd be likely to hit, the one that wasn't Yunaka, so I needed to quickly devise a path to victory, and that was, just get lucky. So I moved Chloe away, and every enemy ran at Yunaka. I fortunately could easily block off the longbow guy again with Chloe, but he was still attacking Yunaka, and being scared, I unequipped her weapon to prevent her from killing, which I think is a misplay. But we still somehow survived, and after re-equipping the weapon, our RNG was perfect. We dodged the boss's attacks, and was also missing the archer, and slowly but surely, the boss was weakened low enough to be killed. So I used a torch with Yunaka to reveal a path for Chloe to use Override, then I used Warp Ragnarok, and confirmed a kill with a Leer. But I wanted to kill the longbow archer, meaning I had to use my final use of the time crystal, to just use a torch on the previous turn. There should have been no risk in doing this, and as expected, we were fine. And now Yunaka had an opportunity to attack the longbow guy, she got lucky enough to hit, and we bursted down the boss and cleared the chapter. Now we've unlocked the ability to cook, and since we used most of our tonics on chapter 6, the stat boost from Salene's cooking were going to be very helpful in the upcoming chapter of John's Paralogue. This map is honestly a huge step down in difficulty, as with the stat boost from cooking, Yunaka was easily able to survive combat against like 3 units in one turn. Salene was doing fine near this part over here, and so was Vanda. We now just killed the cav with Salene and Chloe, but it wasn't as easy to kill the axe fighter to the left. So I just ended turn to bait them in along with the mage. Suddenly, a cav and mage towards the right started to move, so I took this as a good opportunity to move Yunaka away and kill that axe fighter, while everyone else retreated towards the north. I made a mistake here as the Leer got hit on enemy phase, and it made the resulting player phase a little harder, as I needed to move Yunaka away from the mage over here as they one-rounded her. So I settled with killing the enemy above with Salene, and killing the archer below with Yunaka. For enemy phase, I carefully baited over the cav to Boucheron, and baited the flyer over with Vanda. Next up, I covered Boucheron's escape with Yunaka, and killed the flyer, baiting in the archer on enemy phase. With just an override and a attack from Boucheron, we killed the powerful mage, and then the final cav died on enemy phase. And now this map was pretty much over. There was just one threatening axe fighter to the north, who was easy to kill, the boss could be trapped, and the sword cav doesn't move. So it was a free win from here. After finishing the chapter, we recruit John, who is a literal child, so you know we'll take good care of him, and we definitely won't just use him as a human shield. Now Leer easily dodges an attack from a unit with 0 skill, and then we witness this abomination, who is like 3 feet in front of us in this cutscene, and then it fades to black, and she's suddenly like a mile away. We now start this map with a rather annoying 48% chance to hit with Oakcrest. If he misses, we'll have to reset, and it's kind of annoying. Anyway, after landing the attack, Chloe swoops in to clean up. This Ammonite was then killed with 2 engage attacks, then the final soldier was killed by everyone else. On the next turn, there were enemies to the south and enemies to the north. I couldn't kill them both, so I let loose a override on the 2 lancers, weakening them just enough to kill. More enemies came in, but I still had to dispatch the mages. So I did that, then afterwards I tried to retreat, using chain guards for extra safety, and Yunaka's Higher Void to give me some extra space while stalling a few enemies. But eventually her Higher Void wasn't enough, and she died, and we had to reset. On my next good attempt, I was in a similar situation, and was also getting surrounded, but with good use of chain guards, we managed to hold out. Then our powerful archers allowed us to quickly explode 2 of the flyers, and my remaining unit's combined power managed to kill 2 more, leaving just an archer alive, who would kill, but they wouldn't if we chain guarded. Now I surrounded them and built up some engages as I've done before. Chloe now lured in the next formation of units, while the rest of my squad waited for them in the west. While they were waiting, Chloe used her Sigurd Engage to dash past the enemies, and lure a few of them back to chase her, reducing the number of units I had to kill in quick succession. And after I killed an isolated flyer, the bulk of the enemy forces came in, and they lined up perfectly, allowing for a big override to cripple them, leaving them vulnerable to easily be destroyed. Now there were just 3 enemies remaining, and they were all fairly bad, with an archer who could be surrounded, a healer who had mediocre defense, and an armor who couldn't one-round anyone. So yeah, pretty easy. And after building up my engages again with the archer, we were ready to fight Hortensia. We baited her out with a Leer since all for one kind of stinks. Now by poisoning her with Yunaka, I could override her for some chip, place Lapis adjacent for more chain attacks, and we just attacked from range until she could be finished off with a Lodestar Rush. After watching Hortensia's hair clip into her outfit, We watch Veil shoot an actual Kamehameha, then Diamant shows up and we listen to some super interesting dialogue before Roy comes in there with the Wakanda Forever for some reason. After Ivy flies in, we begin Chapter 8, that we actually needed to do some specific preparations for before we could attempt. First, I needed Chloe to cook a 4-speed meal. I could rig this via resting to make her show up, and then I could eat, and if I got the wrong result, I could just reload my save, and roll bond rings until I got my desired cooking result. Now I just engraved a slim sword to boost a void, promoted Chloe, and with the power of the literal Triforce at our side, we could actually start Chapter 8. On this map, there are a large amount of enemies that all eventually rush you, so I decided I would just cheese this map by placing Chloe right here, and using a pure water to bait in Ivy on turn 1. Now I backed away and placed Yunaka in range to poison her on enemy phase, while Amber and Vanda blocked the enemies to the right, and with a Roy Engage that surprisingly still grants stat bonuses to capped stats, I used a Blazing Lion to block off the 2 Lancers to the right, and Diamant survived utilizing Holdout. As long as we didn't get crit, we would be good. So on my next try, we landed the poison, survived enemy phase, and now it was time to kill Ivy. I started the turn by healing everyone up with Boucheron, then I used Override and placed Lapis to help with chain attacks. Diamant could now safely attack and set up for even more chain attacks that Ulcris could make good use of thanks to his free attack range. Yunaka now took out Ivy's first HP bar, then with Echo with Saline, Ivy was weakened low enough that Alir could finish her off with chain attacks. After King Morion drops like 50 death flags, he charges at Hyacinth and almost kills him, but he falls for the classic anime pitfall of instead of finishing off his opponent, he just kinda stands there and lets them power up. He now basically dies, and we are told to hurry up to rescue him before he is dragged away. But I'm sure he'll be fine, as we now took a detour to attempt the Anna Paralogue. Now for this map, I made sure to prepare by picking up an S-rank Ulwin bond ring to gain access to Dire Thunder, that despite our unit's low magic is still quite potent when combined with Spur Attack from Alfonso's bond ring, and Divinely Inspiring. Anyway, to start this map, I sent Alir and Diamant up to fight the Axe Fighters. And my units to the north don't really have an objective, since they aren't going to be fast enough to help Anna or kill any of the thieves. They just kind of killed a few units. My other squad needed to work much harder and faster, especially since I couldn't advance on turn 2 because of the mage, and I had to use Roy's Engage attack to slow them down. But I still couldn't kill both of the Axe Fighters on player phase, but with an attack on enemy phase, they died. And on the next turn, I could punch to break the mage, then finish with Diamant, and start attacking the Armored Knight, who died on the next turn, but who was also at risk of dying was Anna, as on this turn, one of the thieves opened the chest and attacked her. Fortunately, she wasn't doubled, and after killing the Axe Fighter blocking her path to retreat, I moved in to intercept. But we suffered from the problem of the healer would actually quad, and could easily kill everyone who didn't have holdout. So I intentionally weakened the armor to try to make them heal, and this worked, allowing me to kill both of them on the next turn. And now my focus shifted to the units to the east. But they weren't too hard, as with Override, I effectively made the archer useless by surrounding them. Then my units to the west could decimate the knight, leaving just a sword fighter remaining who was easy. With that done, the map was pretty much over, so after collecting some gold from this guy in the top left, I baited out this group of units, got some kills on enemy phase, then destroyed them on player phase. Now I just chain guarded to bait out the boss. They were really easy to kill now, as with a bunch of chain attacks and engage attacks, they quickly met their demise, meaning we could now go do Chapter 9, a map featuring Jade, a unit that will immediately die on turn 1, and I don't really care enough to think of a way to save her, so, she's dead. Anyway, my units ran north to bait in a few enemies, and by using most of my engages, I managed to dispatch of the entire group of units. Now we were just fighting a few incoming flyers, with a Marth Engage, Amber was having an easy time killing. There was also a few aggressive armored units, but their low speed made them fairly unthreatening. Now after killing the 2 Lancers in the south, I could focus on fighting Kagetsu and Zelkov. So I first tried to fight Zelkov, but after killing him, I struggled to deal with both the armors and Kagetsu. So I rewinded and tried to start with Kagetsu this time. But this was way worse. I couldn't win, so I tried to fight Zelkov again. But this time I allowed 2 units to attack Diamant, arranging them in a line for Chloe to deal high damage with an override, allowing for me to kill them without using Blazing Lion, which was useful on this next turn, as it allowed me to stall Kagetsu while killing a majority of the armors and surviving enemy phase with a chain guard. For our upcoming turn, I just killed the armor that could still stand, and realizing I couldn't take both the armors near Kagetsu and him himself, I sent Chloe up to distract them, allowing for me to just barely manage to take Kagetsu down and use a chain guard to not die on enemy phase. Chloe was now actually in some trouble. The enemies seemed to have moved to leave her little space to retreat, so I had to find the perfect space to stand to only fight one enemy that crit me because of course they did. After she ran away, the map was pretty easy. As with the space Chloe had created, we had no issues clearing out the final few enemies, and now we could fight Ivy. Fortunately, she was an easy opponent to beat. I just had to set up for a big override with Chloe, then Vanda could finish off her first HP bar. Now Diamant charged in to get some chip, survived with holdouts, and set up for a chain attack. With my units in range to attack, I could now chip her down low enough for Amber to secure the kill and end the chapter. With that map over, we watch a barefoot Vale who is probably freezing disappear into the blizzard, via a fairly silly transition of panning from a shot of her running to Aaliyah standing there, and then she's gone. Now I prepared for the next map by inheriting a few skills, with Aaliyah and Diamant taking holdout to guarantee survival, Saline taking magic +2 for some extra damage, and pretty much everyone else with low SP taking hit +10 for improved reliability. The only outlier was Yunaka, who picked up avoid +10 to help her avoid. After doing some forging, we moved on to chapter 10, where we watched Hortensia do some animations that were clearly not designed with her model in mind. Now we watched Diamant and Okras do some very silly theatrical hand motions, and then we get this weird shot that goes on for a strangely long amount of time. With the door firmly shot by the power of Hyacinth's magic, I guess, it was time to start this map. For turn 1, I just baited out Rosado squad, then I used my archers to finish off the flyers, with Okras needing just a little extra chip from Roy's engage attack to finish off this guy. Then to finish off Rosado, I just had to attack with Boucheron and Saline. To the right, Yunaka engaged with Leaf to attempt to hold off Gold Mary's forces, but her avoid was too high, and only an armored unit attacked her. Fortunately, she could still damage this archer, and she could poison them, making it easier to deal with them. To the left, the flames from Roy's engage attack ensured no one would die, but right now I had to kill this Cav. I wanted to also kill the mage, but they were just too far away. So the best I could do is use a chain guard to survive. After securing the kill, Diamant, Aaliyah, and Chloe moved here to lure in the approaching enemies. With enemies approaching from above, I decided it would be best to deal with them first, so I killed the thief, securing the treasure. And I left the Thunder Mage alive, as they weren't much of a problem, along with the units in the south, that I now started to attack, and killed quite easily, leaving just an easy Gold Mary alive, as well as an easy to kill knight. So with them dispatched, we could focus on Hortensia. To safely bait out the formation safely, I positioned Chloe and my fortified defense bot Okrest on the left side of the room, to lure a few enemies away from my main squad. It took a few tries to do this safely, as the archer kept moving right, which caused me to just get overwhelmed and die, but eventually I found out if I used 2 obstructs, he would move left towards Chloe. Now 4 enemies were in range to attack me, but I could only at best kill 3 of them, with Dire Thunder for the armor, Amber's bow for the flyer, and by abusing the archer's inability to counterattack, I managed to kill them. With obstructs, I blocked the magic artillery to prevent Hortensia from one-shotting Clan, and with another obstruct, I prevented the armored unit from attacking Clan, causing them both to attack Diamant. Fortunately here, he dodged, allowing for the knight to quickly die, and since I was unable to kill Hortensia this turn, I just blocked her from moving with obstructs and my 2 units with holdout. With every one of my units in range to attack Hortensia, she swiftly died. Then I surrounded this archer, again to build up some engages, and now I broke down the door to fight Morian. The big problem here is he is backed up by 3 additional units. So the problem here is even if I killed Morian, I needed to make sure either everyone would die that I couldn't do, or I needed to make sure I had a durable frontline. And this was much easier to do if I didn't have to worry about the Chi Adept. So I utilized a Blazing Lion to prevent the Chi Adept from moving far. And with another engage, I weakened a sword fighter low enough that Yunaka could finish them off. My 3 attack range units now attacked, and with Echo's extra action, we just barely killed Morian and survived enemy phase. Now, all we had to do is fight Hyacinth, who dealt surprisingly low damage with Astrostorm at a very low speed, but this Astrostorm positioned him to be behind these mages here, so I just had to retreat and wait for a good opportunity to attack. That came right here, as I landed a stack of poison on enemy phase, then I achieved another stack of poison on player phase, giving 3 additional bonus damage on every attack. So now we just fired off attack after attack, and this true damage combined with brave weapons was especially effective, allowing me to kill Hyacinth and end this chapter. Okay, we now now watch Hyacinth die, and this is followed up by an introduction to 3 of the most unique looking characters in the game. And then there's Movia, who is literally just a generic unit in disguise. While this is all going down, thanks to Will's 0 stat and IQ, the idiot literally gets his ring stolen because he was looking the other way. After witnessing Sombron switch Marth to his preferred Super Smash Bros. Skin, the game just fades to black, and I am left theorizing at how Will managed to escape. Like, I feel like he was surrounded, right? So I think the only way he could escape is literally smash through these windows, which is kind of silly. Anyway, we now start Chapter 11, and we're in a pretty dire situation, as without emblem rings, we kind of suck. Like, we have no stats, and have no way to really cheese this map, along with no time crystal to help with our awful hit rates. So for turn 1, all I could do is kill the fighter with Roy, luring in the Celica user. Now things were much harder, as I needed to kill all 3 enemies here, and this took some good luck, and I had to reset quite a few times here, needing to hit this shot with Amber, these attacks with Clan and Saline, then for the mage we needed to land 3 more attacks, with Boucheron, Diamant, and Chloe. Now the Sigurd user moved in, and for this map, the Sigurd users were easily the most dangerous, especially if their range overlapped with another enemy, and on this turn, that was happening. In panic, I did this, and lost, and I was sent back to turn 1. And here, I slightly changed my plan, in regards to where I positioned Yunaka, as placing her right here slightly delayed the Sigurd user, placing him right here, just in range to kill along with the archer below. Also, with an obstruct and Yunaka, I could keep the Handax Cav at bay, allowing for my lower units to have some space to retreat. But who couldn't retreat is Yunaka, as I needed her to move up, and sacrifice her life to delay as many enemies as possible. With her reducing the pressure, my lower units made steady progress, but that wasn't quite fast enough, as suddenly every enemy in the south started to move, and with their high numbers, I couldn't get out unscathed. There was even a Sigurd user approaching from the north. To make the ring users lose their rings, I moved down low enough to make Ivy appear, but this came at a cost of Clan's life, and considering he was one of my best offensive units, I couldn't find a way to win from here. I could only reset, and reset, and reset. Death and defeat were becoming familiar, as my failed attempts began to pile up. Everything had to be perfect if I wanted to win. I needed perfect RNG, perfect execution, and I needed to be fast. It took many tries, and close to 5 hours of attempts, but this time, everything was going well. Yunaka was holding off the enemies above, we managed to kill the flyer and the cav, and we were making great time too. And on the next turn, Chloe passed the trigger to make Ivy's squad appear, so as long as I could take this Roy user out, we could gain access to the time crystal and have a decent chance of winning. But this first turn was not that easy. I needed to use chain attacks and trade around the Levin sword just to survive. To take out the enemies above, I used my 2 Dire Thunder users. After Yunaka died, Link's clones distracted the enemies to the left. Now I just had to kill the 2 enemies below, and freeze this thief over here, allowing me to survive another enemy phase. For this turn, my priority was to kill the 2 mages. One was killed by my Thunder users Chloe and Zelkov, and the other was killed by Amber, Alir, and Kagetsu. Again, I froze the thief, and now the hounds were rapidly approaching my position. I had to clear the map quickly. I could only survive 1 more enemy phase. I tried aggressively positioning like this, but it wasn't enough, and unit after unit died, so I tried again and positioned slightly better, making sure Alir was in range to escape on the next turn. The only mistake I made here is in relation to Clan, who got his head stabbed by Marnie. Now I needed to clear a path to escape, so I moved in some units to chain attack, and Saline managed to land her attacks, allowing for Alir to escape and end the chapter. With that chapter done, I unlocked another one of Fire Emblem Engage's weird minigames, reclassed Chloe to Warrior for more chain attacks, and started chapter 12. That is usually like one of the easiest maps in the game, but for this run, it's really hard. Like, really, really hard. Like, you could never guess how long it took me to beat this map. Literally 7 hours. This map was very painful, but why is it so hard? The big problem here is mainly we lack emblem rings, so we lack firepower, and like every relevant enemy moves around turn 3, so it's really easy to get overwhelmed, especially by the Wolf Knights. There is one way to sort of deal with this immense amount of pressure, and that came in the form of the green units. Without question, they were the priority for most enemies on this map, so if you kept one alive, they could separate the enemies into 2 groups, making them much easier to take down. So for one of my first attempts, I used Astrostorm to quickly kill the flyer with the spear, and my other unit ganged up on the axe fighter to kill him. Some of my units now positioned to make use of chain attacks on this player phase that required good positioning and a little luck to take out all 3 enemies. The mage over here was particularly difficult, as I couldn't break them and they could deal high damage up close and at a distance. So I decided this would be a good time to use Lucina's Engage attack. That was actually surprisingly useful on this map. After Kagetsu narrowly survives an attack from the Wolf Knight, it was all hands on deck as we needed to take them out, needing both chain attacks and a lucky hit from Alir to do this easily. But after baiting out the 2 sword users, we were now in a little trouble, and even after using the time crystal a few times, I couldn't figure out a way to escape with all the enemies coming from all sides. For this next attempt, it represented the halfway mark of my eventual clear of this map, and I was already starting to optimize the start of the map by not burning my 2 engage attacks early, and making better use of my allies who could attack at free range, allowing me to survive turn 2 without using my 2 engages, making this Wolf Knight easier to kill by guaranteeing the hit with Lucina's engage attack. For this enemy phase, I chose to not bait in the Swordmaster, making him run left. Without the Swordmaster's pressure, I could kill the Sword Fighter here and still have enough actions to defeat the warrior, and I could ignore this guy as he was stuck in the sand. Now a warrior was pushing me from the right, so I used a Lin's clone to distract him for a turn, allowing for me to defeat the 2 axe users and prepare for the incoming flyer reinforcements. As you would expect, their weakness to bows made them really easy, but now the green units in the south were about to die, so every enemy was going to come charging at my position, with the most scary enemies being the Wolf Knights. All I could really do is retreat. Now at this place right here, I found it much easier to fight them. The only problem is I needed to land a freeze to hold off one of the Wolf Knights. Now the issue I was having is I needed to be a little more proactive in my previous turns. As with this mage above, I didn't have an easy way to clear out the Wolf Knights, and my time crystal uses slowly whittled away until I just lost. Okay, for my winning attempt, the only major difference here is actually the green units just died sooner, which I initially thought would be bad, but it actually caused the powerful Wolf Knight reinforcements to get stuck in the sand, giving me an opportunity to make use of these choke points to swiftly deal with one of them, and freeze the other. I had a little trouble killing the remaining Wolf Knight because of the mages, but with Boucheron's spectacular HP, he was one of my only units capable of surviving getting doubled by the mages. Using chain attacks, these remaining enemies were easy, and Demon kept the final 2 enemies stuck in quicksand, allowing for me to finally end this map. After a quick trip back to the Somniel to forge a Radiant Bow, one of the best weapons we can use in this run thanks to its high might, allowing us to one-shot some powerful flyers. So with these preparations complete, we started the Lucina Paralogue, another usually very easy map, but this time it was a little harder than usual, as the 4 mages could one-shot most of my army, and with their free attack range, a longbow couldn't help us here, so they were the biggest problem here. For my first turn, I baited in one of the warriors with Diamant, and positioned everyone else to chain attack, so after surviving enemy phase, I could kill the 2 enemies, and summoned Lin's clones to boost Alir's offense. And we needed this boost to ensure that we could kill the foreign mage to the left after an attack with Boucheron. During enemy phase, the clones served a secondary purpose, of delaying the foreign mage, giving us an opportunity to unleash some attacks on the enemies above, who we could just barely kill. The clones served their purpose again, but with them now gone, we were going to be rushed down by 3 aggressive units. We couldn't make a player phase play, as their range overlapped. The best I could do is back up and recharge Lin. Okay, this was not looking good. There was no way to kill the mage, and they one-shot most of my units. We could take down the general easily, but we needed to be smart to survive the mage, so I used Lin's clones to summon distractions. Then I used a few uses of the time crystal to discern how the AI would respond to the clones. This allowed me to find a pattern in the AI and abuse it to allow Kagetsu and Chloe to survive. Now with every target the mage could kill and attack having 1 HP, they chose to attack the clone, allowing us to kill them on the next turn, and from there the other warrior was easy. And now it was time to fight Lucina, who is pretty mediocre, so after using holdout to bait her out, now I killed the sniper reinforcement and surrounded Lucina. She was now guaranteed to use her lackluster engage attack. We survived, then I pelted her with chain attacks from a distance, killing her and ending the map. During a cutscene, we witness a strange cameo appearance by Pac-Man, and this is followed up by meeting 3 dumb-looking characters, of Marin, who is a furry, Panette, who could probably be a monster in a horror game, and Tamara, who, I don't even know what's going on here. After witnessing a blind Marin and Panette who literally cannot see the guys like 10 feet in front of them, we start chapter 13. Honestly, this map is pretty easy. The hardest part is really at the start here, as keeping Tamara's group alive took a little thinking, but the solution was to just be aggressive. So I pushed in, killed the sword user, and blocked off the swordmaster with obstruct. Tamara now engaged to block off the barbarian, and with that we survived enemy phase. Since Tamara's group was still in danger, I needed to use an Astral Storm to help them out and kill the barbarian. With the swordmaster killed and the sword flyer killed on the following turn, I could breathe a sigh of relief as now the map was fairly easy. The only incoming enemies were the flyers, and with an army mostly comprised of warriors who could wield bows, yeah, the rest of the map was fairly simple, as even the powerful wyverns could be one-shot with the radiant bow. When I say this here is probably the most eventful turn on the map, where I had to use an obstruct to make sure Diamant didn't die, you know this map was fairly easy. Okay, so now I've killed the flyers, and now we're just going to cheese this map. We can do this by positioning here. This will cause the ranged units to see a target and they will move. Right now, I did this to lure in the longbow sniper. Now I needed a precise strategy to safely take him down, and this strategy was to use Astral Storm, as it would allow me to attack the guy without being counterattacked. And I could easily recharge Emblem Engage by attacking this guy right here, and after enough time passed, the sniper died. I could now just use attacks from longbows to steadily clear out every ranged unit on the map, including one of the bosses. Now with every ranged unit killed, I used Ivy to lure in the melee units, and waited for the boss to appear, so I could now just nuke them down, and I cleared a fairly simple map. Now we ran around the Desert of Solm to find a dog, a camel, and what was the most strange of them all, a flamingo? Okay, maybe I'm just stupid, but I don't think that's the correct habitat for that animal. Anyway, we now enter Solm Palace to find not one character that has serious clipping issues, but two. And for the second one, it's way worse, as this is her idol animation. After the game references Kaga's strange obsession, we begin chapter 14. Another usually easy map, and for this run, it was pretty tough. The first mistake I made was trying to kill both of the thieves. I needed an Astral Storm to do this, and whenever I was about to build up my second Astral Storm, the second thief was usually in range to run away. So for my first decent attempt, I started the map by running right, and I was honestly not having any problems. Astral Storm one-rounded the thief, the flyers weren't really a problem, everything was going good, until the Cavs and the Lancers ran at me from behind, forcing my army to turn back and face them. But their range overlapped, so I had to struggle to kill two enemies in a single turn with chain attacks, and I had to use an obstruct to hold off the third enemy in range to attack me. We had another turn where we were struggling to kill, and for surviving, we were rewarded by the map making a bunch of units move. I couldn't really react to this though. I had to just attack the enemies in front of me, but then the flyer reinforcements came in, who were the nail in the coffin. We were surrounded, there were too many enemies, I had to reset. For our next attempt, I decided to focus on running left rather than right. But first, I made sure to kill the thief and the powerful wyvern. Now I had to deal with the Lancers and Cavs, one of the most difficult enemy groups to deal with. With Diamant and Ike's reasonable durability, I could block the lower lane, meaning I just had to kill two enemies, then block off the others with an obstruct. We got in a similar situation here again. I managed to kill 3 of them, but 1 I was unable to kill, but they weren't dangerous by utilizing a chain guard. I backed up on this next turn, but now I had to fight. Fortunately, they were simple to dispatch, and now before I knew it, the cavalry reinforcements were running in from above, which meant after defeating them, the flyers were about to appear. I knew I had to deal with them, and quick, so I rushed over to fight them, and slowed the aggressive halberdier with obstructs. Now our warriors shot down the flyers, giving us space to form up a line, meaning my frontliners could only be attacked by 1 unit at a time, making it possible to survive an enemy phase. But this turn was very hard. We had to both kill 4 enemy flyers, 1 with Amber, another with Boucheron, the 3rd with Chloe, and the final one with Tamara. But now I had to survive the very dangerous hand axe fighter. After burning most of my uses of the time crystal, I figured out a plan utilizing obstructs and bonded shield to scrape by. I now killed the enemies to the right, and now we could just run right and kill the now scarce amount of mobile enemies. With them gone, I could focus on the hounds, who were the easy part of this map, as you can quite easily cheese them by individually baiting them out with Astral Storm, that you can quickly recharge with the vast amount of emblem energy tiles. With a whole team's worth of chain attacks, the hounds quickly got destroyed, and while I was doing this, I also cleared out some of the units around Hortensia, making it easy to bait her out. Then I did the same to her as I did the hounds, ending the chapter. Now in the Somniel, we can create bond rings from 3 houses, and Claude's ring was one I was expecting to be useful, as it expanded the range of my warrior's chain attacks, and would be very useful when we lose our rings on chapter 22. We could now also inherit Divine Pulse, giving us an improved chance to hit for a low SP cost. Anyway, on chapter 15, we enter a Scooby-Doo mansion, and we begin a chapter where Seedol is in range of 2 enemies that literally just one-round him on turn 1. And since I missed the rescue back in chapter 13, I really needed to think long and hard if I wanted him to survive. After thinking it over, I came up with a plan. First, I had Hortensia use Obstruct to block one of the Corrupted from attacking Seedol, then Boosh came in with an Astrostorm, weakened the Corrupted on the right enough that with a Bile of Dance, Vanda could secure the kill, allowing for Seedol to stay safe. Now all I had to do is reposition Hortensia, summon Lynn's clones, and then I could end my turn. Holdout could ensure our survival, and now this is where things got complicated. Like in the previous turn, Hortensia had to use Obstruct, and our main problem were the 5 powerful enemies in front of us. Each one was capable of one-rounding basically everyone in my army, and try as I might, killing 5 enemies in one turn was ambitious. Even with the large damage inflicted by Boucheron, 2 enemies were still left standing, ensuring my demise, and making me have to rethink my plan to one that just required better luck. You see, if I landed a crit with either a Lear or Diamant, and combine that by getting a little more chip with Chloe by utilizing Bonded Shield, I could have enough damage to succeed. So by attacking with Vanda, then Tamara, killing with Bouche, and attacking again with Chloe, there was just 1 enemy remaining who died to Diamant and Amber. From here, the 2 enemies remaining were quite simple to defeat, and now we could recruit Seedol and open the first door, but we weren't going to go in there yet, as with the Claude Bond Ring, we have 1 additional attack range, allowing us to break down this next door, and utilized our long range to not only lure in the next group of enemies, but safely thin their numbers enough that they weren't really a problem when they reached me. I now did this again by breaking down this door and killing these guys while building up a Emblem Engage. This allowed me to trigger the reinforcements without baiting in the enemies above, making them quite easy to kill. Now I used a Chain Guard and Diamant's Holdout to lure in the next formation of units, who I killed a few of in this choke point, and used Corin to block the others off, and survived the ranged assault with the help of Bonded Shield. After dispatching the survivors, I progressed to this place here where I utilized Corin's Ice Dragon Vein to safely kill everyone there. Now I ran everyone back, triggered the reinforcements with Hortensia, and it turns out that these guys are not that bad when you can just chain attack them down. So with them killed, I baited out the next formation of units, and cheesed them by attacking over this wall again. Then with them split up, they were fairly easy to kill. Now I literally just did this again with the final few enemies near the boss, having an even easier time than the previous group due to their lack of ranged options. Now with them all dispatched, Seedol ran to the escape point and we cleared the map. Vale now gets defeated in a conversation, but she can't fall here and begins to make her retreat. Over to Gris, where I got mildly amused by mashing A to replay the dialogue. For plot convenience, Goldberry and Rosado now steal an emblem ring, and we must begin at chapter 16. For this map, every enemy rushes at you very quickly, so we needed to win as fast as possible, and a covert unit with Lynn was the key to speed through this map. To begin this map, I just unloaded 2 engage attacks onto the worm and finished them off with Vanda. Diamant secured a kill on the Levin Sword user on enemy phase, and here is where I send in Zelkov to attack Marnie to make her move. I also used a Flame Dragon Vein to cover him and make this aggressive play safe. With Marnie charging in, retreat was our smartest move. So we did that with the help of the Flame Dragon Vein to slow the enemies down, while my other units focused on killing the thief above. Now the water levels rose, so we no longer had to worry about the middle lane, so we could focus on fighting the Lance units below. When the water levels changed again and the reinforcements appeared is when I was having problems, as I had to deal with enemies in multiple directions, north, south, and west, and I just kind of lost. But a slight change in plan was all I needed to win from here. You see, since there were enemies coming from multiple directions, if I just pushed down below, I would only have to worry about enemies approaching from above, that I could block off with a Flame Dragon Vein. This resulted in a quite eventful turn, a turn where I couldn't kill everyone. I prioritized killing Movia since it was a win condition, then I ended the turn by smashing this guy down and using Corin's engage attack to restrict enemy movement. The water levels now rose, and Marnie was closing in on our position. So after stalling for a few turns with the Flame Dragon Vein, it was easy to place most of my squad in range to attack her, allowing me to swiftly end the chapter. Now in the Somniel, we can inherit skills from Erica, and her Lunar Brace was looking quite appealing, as it gave units access to a decent amount of true damage, which seemed helpful. So now the skill combo I was going for is Divine Pulse to allow my units to hit, and Lunar Brace so they could deal damage. Anyway, I now attempted the Ike paralog, a fairly easy one if you just Astral Storm Ike on turn 1. Survival was now my focus, and with tools like the Flame Dragon Vein, we easily survived for the 2 turns needed for him to break the wall. Now with chain attacks and damage from the newly acquired Lunar Brace, we had no trouble killing him to end an easy map. Okay, so next up was the Byleth paralog, a map where like 80% of the enemies just don't attack you unless you block the way to one of these stones. But because of how easy this map is, I didn't actually know how the AI would work if I Astral Stormed Byleth, and at first it didn't cause him to move, so I played the map as usual. And by the time Byleth started to move, I was already being swarmed by the enemies that would actually attack, of the Silverbow Snipers, Elf Under Sages, and the Worms, causing me to just give up and try again, but this time I Astral Stormed the Wyvern near Byleth, and this actually caused him to move. So now I needed to prepare, so I rushed every one of my units to the right, as that was the direction Byleth would run. Now I didn't have to worry about most of the units since they didn't attack. My priority was rushing down to fight Byleth, but before he could reach my team, the aggressive sniper started to move in front of Byleth, meaning there wasn't a clear path to attack Byleth. Now using Flame Dragon Veins, I tried to manipulate where Byleth moved, but this didn't quite work, so I had to use quite a few uses of the Time Crystal just to make him move how I wanted, which just required 2 uses of Obstruct to block the snipers. With Byleth in the front, I had an opportunity to attack him, but despite making use of a whole team's worth of chain attacks, I came just short by about 20 HP, causing me to lose again. Now on my next try, I managed to position Byleth to already be in range to be targeted by chain attacks, meaning my first few attacks were inflicting slightly more damage than before, and I also gave Goldmary enough levels to learn Brave Assist, granting even more chain attacks. With this slight boost in offense, I actually managed to kill him with Boucheron, and I beat the chapter. In the Somniel, I now reclassed Panette and Kagetsu, and begun Chapter 17, where after seeing one of the best PNGs in the game, we witnessed even more clipping, and then we witnessed this strange scene where for some reason they talk on the map rather than in one of these cutscenes. Anyway, we now start Chapter 17. My first priority here was blocking off the armored units above and killing the halberdiers. For turn 2, I still couldn't kill the armors, as Gris was in range to deal immense damage with Dark Warp, so I used Diamant to lure him in, and everyone else had to retreat down to fight the warriors, needing a Byleth dance to kill them all. After Gris warped in, I had to kill him, which was quite easy to do by utilizing units with free range to avoid taking counterattacks. With him killed, I could finally kill the armors, but now there was a big squad of units coming down from above. There was no way I could fight them all, so I delayed them with the Flame Dragon Vein, and dealt with a small squad of halberdiers to the left. Now I was pretty much forced to fight the enemies to the right, and a current engage seemed like the only way to do this. With it, I managed to stall for 2 whole turns, allowing for a few opportunities to kill. Now I had to fight the Worm and the 2 snipers, who were easy, and I even managed to trap one of the snipers, allowing me to build up some engages. Next up was Marnie and Movia's squad. They're much easier, as you can pretty much just use Flame Dragon Veins to render Marnie useless, leaving just Movia and a few Cavs to run at you. With a dance into a current engage, even Movia was easy to lock in place, making both him and Marnie easy targets to kill. Okay, now it's time to fight the final enemy squad. The easiest way to win here is to just move in range of the Worm to make Veil move. Then you can run away so Zephyr can catch up. Now I positioned 2 units adjacent to each other to make her use Override. While surrounded by units who could chain attack, Zephyr was real simple to beat. Cavalry now began to rush in, so I responded by using Flame Dragon Veins to group them together. Then with more Dragon Veins as cover, I could safely kill them. And with more effective uses of the Dragon Vein, I lured in Veil and Hyacinth. As usual, everyone attacked into them, and with the power of friendship, we managed to take them both down to clear another chapter. Now the colorblind Zephyr foolishly throws the Sigurd Ring over to Veil, and we now witness the true power of a unit with a strength stat above 0, as Veil throws the ring like 500 feet across the ocean to somehow reach Alir. We now didn't witness Zephyr hit Veil, because this is a Nintendo game, so they clearly can't show violence. And the real reason couldn't be that they were just too lazy to animate it. Anyway, we move on to Chapter 18. Another chapter I realized I can't just cheese by using Astral Storm, as it doesn't make the boss move. With no easy way around it, I began the chapter knowing I had to do it legit. To begin, I used Great Aether with a Hurricane Axe to swiftly deal with some of the flyers, while Pandreo used Flame Dragon Veins to slow the enemies coming from the left. After enemy phase, a few enemies were in range for me to attack, so I did that. and continue to utilize Flame Dragon Veins along with the cannon to restrict enemy movement to help secure a foothold on the eastern boat, which we needed to do quickly as the flyers to the south were rapidly approaching. Before making the push, I made sure to get as much chip as I could to the eastern enemies and dispatched the final flyer in the north with Diamant. And now I had to run east as there were too many enemies to the west. But first I engaged with Corin to freeze the approaching flyers, danced, then moved up, and danced again with Byleth. Hortensia now recruited Linden, and used obstructs to block the path below to prevent the heroes from attacking. Andreo now froze the two heroes, so we now only had to kill the sages, which I just barely managed to do. You may now notice that we're still in range of the magic ballista, which was a problem that had an 80% chance to be solved by using bonded shield. Okay, now I got a little overconfident and pushed towards the right, and not realizing that I was in danger to just quickly die before the boss moves. So after using the time crystal, I chose to rush towards the boss, making good use of both Corin's Flame Dragon Vein and her freezes to do this quickly. But to make sure Pandreo didn't die, I had to use Obstruct to block the way, causing the boss to run down and fight Diamant. As per usual, defeating the boss was straightforward. Chip them down from a distance with longbows, then finish them off with powerful magic weapons like the Levin Sword and the Radiant Bow. Okay, chapter 19. This one is not very hard. First, I just recruited Saphir, then I used the cannon and the Flame Dragon Vein to make sure Diamant could only be attacked by a single unit. With Hortensia, I repositioned the units in the north, down, and with everyone on the boat, we only had to worry about enemies in one direction, in this choke point here. However, there was still one problem: the ranged Wolf Knights. I needed them gone before this strategy would succeed, and my plan to do this was quite simple. I just used Obstruct like this, so the Wolf Knights would attack at 2 range, allowing me to dispatch them on the next turn. By repeating this strategy, I managed to kill every ranged Wolf Knight, with the exception of one that I killed right here. Bram and John now safely used Chain Guards to make any unit, in this case Ivy, take 0 damage, and they would regenerate their HP with a Deirdre Bond Ring, meaning there was 0 chance Ivy would die, and no enemies could pose an issue other than this worm right here, who was easily cheesed with Pod's Bond Ring's additional attack range to whittle them down. Eventually, Movia began to advance, so I placed Diamant to utilize Holdout to carefully lure him in. Again, like always, we just used longbows to kill, and I did the same for Mani to end the chapter. Chapter 20 was looking a little bit hard, so I decided to power up and did the Erica Paralog. Fortunately, an Astral Storm could help cheese this map, but while I waited for her to approach, I needed to play it carefully. So after using my first turn to block the lower choke, I lured in the calves, and with good positioning, my chain attacks were enough to finish off all 4 of them. Some heroes moved in to the right and left, so I killed the ones I could, then used Dragon Veins to slow down both the enemies below and the enemies to the right. However, they still moved in, and Dragon Veins wouldn't cut it anymore. I had to kill them, so I easily killed the weakened heroes below with no trouble, and with my Brave Assist users in range of the eastern heroes, they were also no problem. On this next turn, we had some space to breathe, think things over, and decide our next move. That, after analyzing enemy move order, I decided to use an Obstruct to make this Sage attack, and clear a path for Erica to move forward. The enemies were now in the perfect position. I just had to smash the hero to the left, and with a Corin Engage attack, Erica would move, and there would be a clear path to attack her. Everyone now attacked her, and she died falling down these stairs, so I had to pan the camera down just to see her. In the Somniel, I made sure to boost Boucheron up to bond level 18 with Erica, to gain the full power of her true damage. I also inherited some skills, with the most important being Luna Brace Plus for Rosado. Then I finished up by engraving a Brave Axe to have some crit, and forged up the Revanche for its high might and crit. We now entered that one castle from Bloodborne, witnessed another silly fade to black, and started the chapter. This map is a Fog of War map, which means it's bad, so I don't want to do it. So I just used torches and the time crystal to locate Chris. When I found him, I needed Rosado to crit. He didn't do that. But after re-warping up with Micaiah twice by dancing, I attacked this guy with Amber, giving Rosado another chance to crit. That he did this time around. Okay, Chris now teleported up, and now it was all up to Boucheron, who with his personal skill active, just needed a crit to kill her. We didn't get this on our first try, but by burning our ends with Gold Mary and Diamant, we managed to get the luck we needed and crit. With a Bile of Dance, we could attack again with Amber, and a Seedle Dance to Leer reduced the boss's HP low enough that Boucheron could secure the kill. Now we watch the most predictable reveal in the game, before witnessing another pretty silly moment in the story where Alir is real sad about something that literally affects nothing, and of course via the fact that he has been defeated and the story requires him to not fall here, Gris has to make his retreat. How does he do it? He just turns the lights off and just disappears. Now after checking how many SP books I have, I discern I can't give everyone Lunar Brace Plus for chapter 22. That I kind of wanted to do, so I decided now I would rush my way through the remaining paralogs. Okay, Micaiah's map. This map is real easy. You just have to Asher Storm Micaiah to make her immediately move, then use Dragon Veins to slow down the armors. While most of my squad approaches the center of the map, I utilize another Flame Dragon Vein to slow down the armored units. But I left a clear path towards the left and blocked it with Obstruct. This made this guy attack, and now Micaiah is in range to be attacked. And she is really frail, so killing her is quite easy. Next, I decided to do the Celica map. To cheese this one, I just re-warped Diamond in range to bait out a Warp Ragnarok. I then began to attack her. She was a little harder to deal with than Micaiah, since less of my units were in range to attack, but with just one lucky crit to take down her second HP bar, her third was simple to whittle away, with the final blow being dealt by a Twin Strike. For Corrin's paralog, I definitely didn't forget she had Pair Up to make her immune to chain attacks, and for turn 1, I moved down to prepare. On turn 2, I used Aster Storm for chip, re-warped down, weakened her with Ivy. Now Boucheron could take out her first HP bar. With a crit from Rosado into another attack with a dance, I took out her second HP bar. Now Alir used Byleth to dance, allowing for Rosado to attack again and take down another HP bar. For her final HP bar, Boucheron crit Corrin so hard that she copied his crit quote for her death quote. On Lynn's paralog, I try it and get unlucky in regards to landing crits, and I have to reset. But on my second try, I re-warp over like I did last time, and this time by utilizing the Time Crystal, I managed to land 3 crits to easily clear the map. This paralog was slightly more complicated than the previous 2 maps, as instead of just warping over to leave, I have to use Asher Storm to make him move a little closer. Then I could warp over and shoot him down with Ivy and Boucheron, easily clearing another map. Roy's paralog was up next, and since Roy is really far away, we couldn't cheese this one. We actually had to play this map, but even then it's pretty easy, since most of the enemies are wyverns, who are extremely vulnerable to powerful effective weapons like the Radiant Bow and Hurricane Axe, who could sometimes land a one-shot, keyword there being sometimes. But even if we missed, we still had more than enough firepower to still clean up. Even the sages were not all that hard. After killing the easy wyverns in the south, we were in a little trouble, because there were a large group of enemies approaching along with the flyers and mages to the east. Thankfully, I could position to fight a few flyers that Diamond could effortlessly kill, and the other flyers were quickly killed. Then with a Corrin Engage, I held the mages in place. From here, the map was super simple. Corrin could hold in place any of my problems, and the remaining enemy group were trivial to defeat. Now I just used Asher Storm on Roy to make him move, then with Corrin's Flame Dragon Vein, I made him move in range to get swarmed by my whole team. And then even Holdout couldn't save Roy from every chain attack that was coming his way. Okay, this is the final remaining paralog, the Sigurd paralog. I actually lost my first try on this one, and it was for a pretty dumb reason. You see, this guy with Meteor, he doubles Pandreo. Apparently you can double with Meteor in this game. I didn't realize that, and I had lost all of my Time Crystal uses trying to rig a crit. Anyway, the way I actually did this map is pretty much I just used a Flame Dragon Vein to split up the enemies and gradually killed them. By repeating the strategy over and over, I killed the initially aggressive enemies and set my sights on the guy with Meteor. With the Flame Dragon Vein, I weakened the Elf Under Mage and retreated with a Dance and Canter. After their HP was reduced low enough, Rosado shot them down, then ran in to kill the Meteor Mage with 2 lucky crits. With the bridge dropped down, all I needed to do is move in range of Sigurd to make him use Override. Of course, with him surrounded, he stood no chance and died. With that chapter done, I made some last minute preparations, like inheriting skills, with my warriors receiving Lunar Brace and Divine Pulse, and my supports mostly receiving Canter and Holdout. Then I forged some weapons to allow me to one-shot some flyers on chapter 22. After wasting my time to reset for a free strength meal that didn't do anything, I entered chapter 21, where sensing she is about to die, Marnie explains her tragic backstory before making the grave mistake of defecting to Alir's army, causing all of her stats to be diminished down to 0, making her deal no damage to Vale. Then with 0 in all of Marnie's stats, Zephyr walks up to her and one-shots her. In deep anger, Mavia attempts to go Super Saiyan, and I now begin the chapter. Also, Zephyr says the line,
"Imposter,
This chapter is quite easy. I just re-warped twice to reach Vale, then by abusing the time crystal, I landed 3 crits with Boucheron to beat the map without thinking. Vale now questions, what is even happening in the story? Then Sombron just kinda shows up out of nowhere and uses Hyper Beam to kill Alir, but with the backup of the 2 strongest units in the game, there was no way Sombron could steal our rings. He now wishes for infinite power, which just causes him to increase in size for some reason. This game follows us up with a cutscene where Sombron shoots a Dragon Ball beam attack to kill Alir. Fun fact, in the female Alir version of this cutscene, the voice acting is slightly unsynced. She responds to being hit before she is actually hit. Alir now enters the moon from Majora's Mask, that translates to being in space in the in-game graphics. I now watch a really silly scene where Edgy Vale and Vale talk to each other before Vale changes her clothes and revives Alir as one of the corrupted. And I now start chapter 22. With no emblem rings, this map was not looking easy, but across this playthrough I had built up a large amount of Plod bond rings, and now was the time to use them. I also reclassed Movia to allow him to chain attack, and Alir to allow them to assist in Martial Master. For our first turn, I decided I needed to kill the 2 warriors, but that was not as easy as it sounds. I needed good luck to do this, and I also needed to use rescue and drawback to have enough units in range. My remaining units also needed to position carefully, as if they didn't, all of the Royal Knights would run left when I wanted them to move up. Now I killed them and positioned Allure in the Wyverns, and kill with the Radiant Bow. This wasn't consistent, and again I had to reset here until the attack landed. Now on this turn I just had to kill up 4 enemies to the right. Nothing too hard. Now with almost no units available to attack, I expected to be unable to kill the final Royal Knight here, but the Goat Boucheron just crit, so we killed them. Here I activated the first few rings, causing the griffins below to move, but before that happened, I collected the Lucina ring with Hortensia. After dispatching the heroes, I needed to position in preparation of the Wolf Knight reinforcements, as now I had to kill 5 enemies in a single turn. Fortunately, they were all grouped together, so if one of my units attacked, they could likely chain attack on others nearby, allowing me to kill them. There were still a few enemies incoming, along with some reinforcements, but they were trivial to defeat. Now I placed Alir right here and baited in the next formation of units. You may notice that there are a lot of enemies here, and yeah, I couldn't fight them in a head-on battle, so I ran around here. There was a slight complication here in the form of the powerful flyers, but to beat them, I just had to wait a turn for them to be in range to be destroyed. Also with a rescue use, I placed Boucheron in range to annihilate this Meteor Mage. In the next few turns, I used Obstructs to hold off the Wolf Knights, allowing for enough space to kill the Griffins. Now by dispatching the 2 Wolf Knights, I could just plug this choke, allowing for me to easily kill the units remaining up here, meaning our new threat was the infinite cavalry reinforcements, since they only came in groups of 3. We had more than enough actions to steadily kill them while pushing down, but here is where I made a big mistake. I used Hortensia to attack this berserker, causing them to charge in, and with no plan, I was quickly pushed all the way back to my starting position. Realizing my space to retreat was limited, I decided this turn I had to attack, but because I didn't realize the High Priest had a shielding art, Kagetsu died, and I had no more uses of the time crystal, so I decided to reset, and it took me like 2 hours to get back to the point where I lost, but this time I played it a little better, as I used Hortensia to lure in the enemies over here so I could shoot them down from a distance safely over this wall. When enough enemies were eliminated, I lured them in and killed them all, needing an entrap to get this done. The final formation of enemies were easily the easiest in the whole map. I just baited them in with Diamant, a Chain Guard, and Holdout. Then they all literally just died on player phase, meaning I could now just collect the few remaining rings to clear the chapter. Alir now dies, and the preceding cutscene shows Alir in the Aurora Borealis rainbow dimension. Then this happens, and now Alir is the Fire Emblem. After looking down on Gradlon from like 300 feet in the air, somehow, I don't know how we do that, I go do Marth's Paralog, a map that I just cheesed by using an Astrostorm to make Marth move. Now I used a Flame Dragon Vein to delay the enemies around Marth, causing him to move in just in range for my army to attack. But before I did this, I walked over to the chest to pick up the Silver Great Axe for some extra gold. With everyone moving in range and attacking Marth, he didn't really put up a fight, and Alir swiftly ended another easy map, allowing us to move on to Chapter 23, a map I thought would be really easy, but it turns out the freeze guys are pretty annoying and I spent like 2 hours on this map. So the problem is literally just these guys with freeze. If they freeze enough of your units, you just lose. Okay, so on turn 1, I just really prepared for the next turn, making sure to not place any of my units in range to be frozen by the Royal Knights above. Now on turn 2, I had to kill the 4 enemies that just moved in, nothing too hard, but I also needed to place Rosado right here, to now lure in the Royal Knights, and with the Sigurd ring he was immune to freeze, making this play safe. Over to the left, I needed to use Great Ether with Diamant to weaken all of the flyers. The problem here is if I get crit on enemy phase, he just dies, and this is the point where most runs failed. Fortunately, this time around Diamant didn't get crit, and with the Flame Dragon Vein to block off the enemies above, I managed to exterminate the flyers. With most of the deadly enemies killed, I now covered my retreat with a Flame Dragon Vein, and backed away with a Micaiah rewarp. Now I had ample space to kill the mounted enemies to the left, then with them gone, it was time to use an Asher Storm to lure in the 2 bosses. I just had to survive for a few turns now, and after killing the Royal Knights who held freeze, the remaining enemies coming from the right were easy, especially considering the Griffins were too busy healing rather than moving. When Zephyr approached is when I had to start strategizing, and she was joined by many units, many exploitable units, as after killing Zephyr and the 3 cabs with chain attacks, I expected the Wyverns to move in a way that would make them kill someone, but they just did this, and like, I guess I just get to win now. Vale now ended the map by using Celica's Echo to hit Gris multiple times with some chain attacks. Zephyr now realizes she is about to die, and attempts to redeem herself by making a magic crystal that changes terrain. Unfortunately, making this crystal just makes her die. And why does she do this? It's the right thing to do or something. Vale now speaks like what a real player insert character should, because that's literally what everyone is thinking. We get another cutscene where they shamelessly try to make you care about the characters, so you'll buy the $30 DLC. I also found this scene really funny, as Zephyr's hair just constantly clips into her outfit, and literally every time the camera angle changes, part of Zephyr's outfit just falls through the ground. On Chapter 24, Vale uses the magic crystal from last chapter to make something happen, which we have to use our imagination to figure out, as the game as usual just fades to black. Alir now explains that he has been sent 1,000 years into the past, which is a very contrived plot point that comes out of literally nowhere. Past Alir now explains what he thinks of the story. Then Alir now summons Marth, causing Past Alir to act like Marth is some kind of legendary Pokemon. Anyway, we now start the chapter that is not very hard. I pretty much just used Obstructs to wall off the first group of enemies, then on the next turn, I rewarped twice to be right in front of Past Alir, and I lowered his Avoid with Corin's Engage attack. Boucheron now crits him 3 times so hard that in the next cutscene, it makes him look like he's levitating a few inches off the ground. On Chapter 25, Vale attempts to go on a solo mission to kill Lumera, but she has 0 magic, so she just deals 0 damage. In the same cutscene, the game goes out of its way to show you who you should give the boots to that you stole from Past Alir in the previous map. After Lumera does some over-the-top animations, we start the chapter where for some reason Alir's squad splits up to look for clues. Anyway, I now warp twice to send some units in range to attack Lumera. I used Corin's Engage attack to lower her Avoid, then Boucheron crits, and Vale utilizes the power of friendship with Echo to deal substantial damage, allowing a Bile of Dance Boucheron to secure the kill and end the chapter. After witnessing the same cutscene as Chapter 3, we move on to the final paralogue, where for some reason this Corrupted Tomahawk pops in for some reason. Okay, for this map we are split up. Obviously, with our strategy being mainly reliant on chain attacks, this was a slight problem. So our priority was regrouping. So I used Pandrea with the Corin Ring to hold the Corrupted near the center of the map in place. And then, after taking out the heroes, I began to move my squad from the left over to the right with the help of rewarp. Then with another rewarp on the next turn, I made sure my whole team was together, and they moved up and to the left in attempt to block the center choke point from above with the Flame Dragon Vein. Now the first part of the map was easy. Everyone just charged in from below and in attack range to just die. Since the mini-boss never actually attacks, I could spend a few turns now just recharging my engages, and placing my units in the perfect position to fight the reinforcements. When my preparations were complete, I killed the final Corrupted to make the rest of the enemies appear. After killing the 4 Corrupted in my attack range, I progressed south, killing the 2 Mage Knights and then the Griffin. There were now 2 Thieves in my attack range. They weren't a problem, but the 3 Bow Knights that backed them up were, so I froze them in place with Corin and killed them on the next turn. During enemy phase, many Corrupted moved in. There were too many to kill in the south, and the enemies above were awkwardly positioned. After some careful thinking, I used Pandreo to freeze the foes in this choke, and with a rescue and a dance, I managed to freeze the cavalry right above, giving me a turn to freely move up and prepare for a strong player phase, where I took all of them down. But in the south, I was having some trouble, but by checking enemy attack order, I found out it would be safe for Chloe to just stay here, as with the flames from Roy's engage attack to block off the past thief, only the Thoron mage could attack. Now I really needed to run right, and good use of Flame Dragon Veins was going to be my key to make it all the way over there, as it allowed me to block off the Mage Knights, allowing me to decimate them on player phase. This next part of the map was pretty much just me retreating and using the Flame Dragon Veins to slow the approaching enemies down. Enemies that overextended quickly met their end, and we had little to no trouble. By the time we reached here, the map was even easier than before, as the enemies just kept splitting themselves up into small groups that were susceptible to be destroyed on player phase. After repeating this form of cheese, I effortlessly routed the map and beat the chapter. Okay, now our journey is almost at an end. One final chapter remains. But first, who should I give the pact ring to? I needed the biggest, strongest, most attractive character in the game, one who had carried this entire run. So after sleeping until they appeared, I dressed up in fitting attire, ran over to them, got down on one knee and said, "Boucheron, will you be my best friend?" He said yes, and we flew off into the sunset. And by that, I mean the giant portal in the sky. Here, Sombron realizes he's going to die, so he explains his tragic backstory, which includes him mentioning Zero Emblem, which sounds like his OC. As he continues to explain about a literal new plot element in the final chapter, I stare at him, then I stare at him again, and I start to realize, is he supposed to look like that? And then I look up a picture of him, and yeah, the hat thing is not meant to be stabbed like 1 inch inside him. After definitely not forgetting to give Boucheron Lunar Brace Plus and losing the chapter because of it, I watch a cutscene where Sombron shoots a bunch of lasers down to make our emblem rings disappear. After all our characters say their like 2 sentences, all our emblems reappear and we begin the final chapter. So on turn 1, I just use Astrostorm to make him move, and on turn 2, I just kinda destroy him. He's real easy to beat, but phase 2 isn't so easy. To start phase 2, I just killed the 2 nearby Dark Emblems, one on the left with Boucheron, and another on the right with chain attacks and my Sigurd uses effective damage. With Obstructs, I walled off the enemies to the left, and after using a Corin Engage to freeze them in place, I no longer had to worry about them. So my sole focus was killing the 4 flyers. That was relatively easy to do. Now I used Micaiah to transport my units from the left over to the right, to assist in taking down the 4 incoming enemies, while Pandreo used Flame Dragon Veins to stall the enemies approaching from the left. During the same turn, I also perfectly timed a Warp Ragnarok with Ivy, to bait in some of the enemies in the north. Now I warped 4 units up, now they all attacked the Bow Knight, but it wasn't enough, so I had to use a Sigurd Engage to secure the kill. Now to make sure these 5 didn't die, I utilized a Micaiah boosted Obstruct to block off the incoming foes. After Sombron used Disengage, I needed to use this Emblem Energy tile to recharge Micaiah, and I used her right away, by rescuing her in range to warp these 4 over to the left. Now they all attacked, but I didn't want them to kill the final Dark Emblem on this turn. After enemy phase ended, a few units died, but we still had the firepower to finish off the final Dark Emblem to drop Sombron's barrier. Now was the time to strike, but there was one slight issue. With most of my units dead, I didn't have an opportunity to kill, to boost Boucheron's strength with Emblem Elirs attuned. This just barely made the difference, and a crit from Boucheron couldn't take out one of Sombron's HP bars, so I couldn't kill and I had to rewind. With smarter positioning with Hortensia, I managed to make her survive, and with the damage boost from Lynn's clones, I managed to secure a kill with Elir this time around, meaning Boucheron could crit Sombron, then crit again and again. With one final strike, our carry landed the final blow, allowing us to beat Fire Emblem Engage with only HP. This run was really hard, especially the early game, where I was spending like 10 hours on average just to solve one map. Despite this, I actually found the early game to probably be the most fun part of this challenge, with my favorite chapter being Chapter 2, since it was solved in such a precise and unconventional way. The difficulty kind of fell off a cliff when we reached the end game, but I still had fun, and if you had fun too, be sure to like the video and subscribe. Anyway, bye.